With over 100 cinematographer credits between 1973 and 2023, Dean Cundey is considered one of the most prolific cinematographers of all time, responsible for lighting and shooting classic films across multiple genres.
Come on, Nick, what do you expect? To live happily ever after?
Yes.
As a kid, Cundey started out shooting miniature models with his dad's 8mm camera. Later, he attended UCLA, where he learned from the legendary cinematographer James Wong Howe. After college, he began working on low-budget films, where he learned to light fast and effectively to tell a story. He also bought his own grip truck and kept crew on hand, which gave him an advantage to being hired for low-budget projects. His experience eventually led to many collaborations with prominent directors like John Carpenter, Steven Spielberg, and Robert Zemeckis. Working with Zemeckis, he was nominated for his first Academy Award, Best Cinematography for the 1988 fantasy comedy Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Because animated characters would be sharing the screen with live actors, Cundey had to find a way to make them look like they existed in the space. In a workshop he hosted at the Coronado Island Film Festival, he said one of the things he learned was that if you want the audience to believe something that doesn't exist on the set, have it interact with that world in some way. This is a lesson he would carry with him to films like Jurassic Park, 1995's Casper, and Looney Tunes Back in Action.
I think when you go to the movies, you should learn something.
One of the ways he accomplished the illusion in Who Framed Roger Rabbit was through lighting. In this scene, he put light on the floor to give the animators an opportunity to use shadows to show the weasels interacting with the world. And in this one, notice how the light hitting Eddie's face is blocked when the gorilla steps in front of it. Cundey loved magic as a kid. At the Sight, Sound, and Story event presented by the Manhattan Edit Workshop, he explained that what appealed to him about magic, and on a larger scale film, was getting the audience to believe the impossible. Sometimes he accomplishes this with subtle and realistic lighting, and sometimes his lighting pushes the boundaries of belief, like in this night scene from Jurassic Park.
My glasses! I can afford more glasses!
And sometimes he uses lighting to create a specific look. On the 1991 fantasy adventure Hook, Steven Spielberg wanted a look that blended theater with reality. He even chose to shoot on a set rather than on location to achieve that. In an interview with Alex Ferrari on the Indie Film Hustle podcast, Cundey explains that he accomplished the look Spielberg wanted by emulating adventure films with similar sets. Take this baseball scene, which is set in the real world. Notice how the sunlight looks like sunlight. It's bright in some areas and it casts shadows on the characters' faces as you'd expect. In Neverland, Cundey chose to use a bright backlight to give the illusion of uncontrolled lighting. That's the reality part. But the characters' faces are always lit evenly and light falls on the set in an unnatural but pleasing way. That's the theatrical part. Whatever he's going for, it's clear that Dean Cundey doesn't like boring light. One lighting technique he uses frequently is employing practical lights in the scene to provide some or all of the illumination. Look at how he creates visual interest with practical lights like flashlights in this scene from Jurassic Park. Or firelight in this scene from Big Trouble in Little China. Or how he uses this glowing cross to illuminate a scene in the fog. Even the real-world scenes in Hook are lit to create visual interest. In Who Framed Roger Rabbit, this light could have easily been stationary, but making it swing accomplishes two things. It gives Roger something to interact with to ground him to the scene, and it creates visual interest as it reveals parts of the room at uneven intervals. Sometimes he lights actors with standard three-point lighting. Sometimes he creates this light sandwich effect by lighting both sides of the face and keeping the center in shadow. He also loves to use cookies and Venetian blinds to add texture to a scene. Sometimes his lighting even has thematic meaning, like in this scene from Jurassic Park, where we see a DNA sequence projected onto a velociraptor. But perhaps most importantly, he uses lighting to obscure and reveal information to the audience, especially in horror. In an interview on the Terror Table podcast, Cundey explained that the role of cinematography in horror is to use light and shadow, mysterious camera movements, and composition to get the audience to experience the on-screen terror as if it's real. Although he worked on several low-budget horror films early in his career, it wasn't until Halloween that he found a director who also saw the camera as a tool to tell the story. On that film, Cundey became one of the first cinematographers to use a Panaglide camera stabilizer. He and director John Carpenter employed the Panaglide to capture long takes that put the audience behind the mask of Michael Myers. If you watch Cundey's films, you'll see him use the camera to reveal information to the audience again and again. Notice just how much is revealed with one continuous camera movement in this scene from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We see the dust-covered desk of Eddie's brother, we learn that the two used to be cops, and we see that they used to work together in Toontown. Every piece of information revealed tells us more about Eddie's character and shows us how he went from being one half of a fun-loving detective duo to being a solo drunk who hates tunes. Because he likes to pack his shots with as much information as possible, Cundey often uses wide-angle lenses and reframes more than once within each shot. In this long take from Jurassic Park, notice how he reveals information to the audience as he changes the composition of the frame. We start wide, following Grant and the kids as they make their way toward the perimeter fence. This angle allows us to see Lex's and Tim's relatively relaxed body language and Grant's nervous glances within the same frame. Next, we go close on the nest to see the hatched eggs. Then he pulls away to this 3-shot to show us the awe on Grant's face.
It's a dinosaur egg.
Cundey is a master of the fundamentals. He knows how to use visual cues to illustrate deep and flat space. He understands contrast and affinity of color. And his control of tone is evident in his lighting. But he's also developed his own style through years of practice and the kind of inspiration that comes from a lifetime of watching movies. At Sight, Sound, and Story, he said film is like language. We're always evolving, but we're always taking something from before. His love of film and passion for filmmaking can be seen in each of his images. Images that, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, may have defined your childhood. And Cundey keeps that passion alive today. Recently, he's continued to evolve his craft on major television series like The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, where new technology poses a new set of challenges for Cundey to solve.